So our next entry in our little Star Trek Round 2 Roundup week is going to be the Great Experiment, the USS Excelsior. This is... It's kind of hard to say this is a reissue, because... Well, the original kit was basically... the toolings were basically ruined back in 1994 for its reissue as the Enterprise B. This kit was originally released as the Enterprise, or as the Excelsior, in I believe 1991 or 92 to coincide with the Undiscovered Country, and it was based on its appearance in that movie. The shooting prop, however, had some modifications, and we'll go into some of the details of that when we actually take a look at the parts. But the toolings for the model kit were modified to represent its appearance in Star Trek Generations as the Enterprise B, which had new outboard impulse engines on the saucer section, as well as some slightly modified warp nacelles, and the secondary hull had like these huge pontoons installed on the front end of the secondary hull, flanking the deflector, which kind of spoiled the lines of that ship, honestly. I mean, I've never been a huge fan of the Excelsior class in general, but that modification really just kind of ruined it. I mean, it took the round, smooth, I don't want to say elegant, but at least clean shape of the original version of the Excelsior and just kind of flattened it out and made it look like it had a pancake stuck to the front of it. It overall gave the front end of the secondary hull a profile similar to the Enterprise D, very flat and squashed and kind of oblong, but it didn't look appealing to me. But the toolings, as I said, for the model kit were modified irreparably to represent that version of the Excelsior class. So it was basically impossible for Round 2 to reissue the kit as the Excelsior using those toolings. So they had to basically, from the ground up, re-engineer almost the entire model. Now, I tried to do an unboxing of this about a month ago when I bought it, and my footage ended up corrupted. I'm not really sure why, but it was a huge disappointment. But as a result, I've taken a pretty close look at this thing already. And it looks like about 70% of the model is, while based on the original tooling, is very significantly modified. The saucer section looks like it's new, having new details, but based on the original tooling. Secondary hull, it looks like it's almost entirely new, having optional components for a different hangar bay, as well as, I believe, a new cargo bay component and new aft torpedo launchers. All that's really left that's original are the warp nacelles, the nacelle pylons, the neck from the saucer to the secondary hull, and the clear parts. And even some of the clear parts I think are new. But yeah, let's, enough babbling. Let's just crack it open and take a look. So, like all the others, the box is pretty much the same as anything. Dramatic photoshopped photo of the completed model with the Star Trek logo, though this one having the Star Trek 50th anniversary, and a call-out indicating that it contains optional parts for both the NX-2000, as seen in Search for Spock, Star Trek 3, and the NCC-2000 version, as seen in Star Trek 6. Though, yeah, Verisons. Nice typo there. A few different views of the completed model on the sides. Box bottom calls out the dome base, pennant, registry, and marking decals, some biographical information. Build NX-2000 or NCC-2000 version with optional bridge, impulse deck, and hangar bay parts. Rear weapons array, detailed cargo bay, blah blah blah. And then just a bunch of photos. Now, as I said, this appears to be predominantly retooled from the ground up, using the same engineering as the original kit, but since the original toolings were lost or destroyed, they pretty much just went from the ground up and redid this completely because, as I recall, the original version of the Excelsior had raised saucer grid lines. Not to mention, it did not have the empty socket where the bridge would be, and had a different rear deck here, which actually was represented by this part here. There were two side-by-side impulse crystals on the rear deck on the original Excelsior model, whereas this one has the option for a single one, and an option for two different bridges. There's the NX 2000 as seen in Star Trek 3, or the NCC 2000 as seen in Star Trek 6. Additional differences include this would be the Star Trek 6 version shuttle bay. You can see there's actually a molded shuttle on the surface. And this is the NX 2000 version shuttle bay, which has two shuttles, but the actual hangar is very, very different. The cargo bay, I've always thought was a weird arrangement, being that it's completely open. There's no cargo bay door to close over anything, but it's very nicely molded, some nice structural ribbing. Overall, the molding is quite nice. Definitely an improvement over the original version of the kit. Saucer bottom, not quite as drastically different as the saucer top. The only difference that I can recognize is the recessed grid lines. Overall, otherwise the details look to be pretty much the same. The planetary sensor looks like it might have a little additional molded, etched detail here and there, but hard to say. The secondary hull, this is what I was the most excited to see. On the original kit, this was all just raised grid lines all over the place. And painting in this weirdly shaped kind of whatever you'd call this goes in sort of a bluey turquoise color versus the rest of the hull, which is the standard white Aztecing. So painting this and masking it and getting the lines correct was a huge pain. So it's nice to see that it's molded in as a panel line. The rest of the lower secondary hull, the ventral portion, doesn't look like it's really changed any, besides just the elimination of the raised grid lines and the standard socket for display base. Secondary hull top, only difference really is just this recessed area where you can insert one of the shuttle hangar bays, where originally it was just the Star Trek 6 style, the kind of hexagonal module just plugged in there permanently. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this runner is original from the first edition of this kit and not a retooling. First of all, it's missing several pieces, which I'm guessing were probably redone for this version of the kit elsewhere on the model, not to mention the actual shuttle bay doors, the external space doors, and this whole housing still has raised panel lines. So that's all going to need to be sanded smooth when this gets built. Nacelle pylons, always felt they were an odd design, just kind of raised off of the rear surface of the secondary hull and then sticking straight out. I don't know, the Excelsior has just always been a weird design to me. But yeah, these appear to be original parts, unmodified from their original version, because again, they have the same raised panel lines for these little bits here, which, yeah, getting those masked off to paint them properly is going to be very, very difficult, because they're very, very fine and they're very close together. So finding some masking between them, because there's a series of steps getting smaller and smaller. top and bottom of all sides. So, yeah, getting those masked so that you've got that little fine line between them is going to be very difficult. And finally, for opaque parts, we've got the warp nacelles themselves, which again appear to be original, and they've got the raised panel lines all over them. So, yeah, when I get around to building this, it's going to take a little time with some sandpaper to smooth everything out. But overall, nothing too difficult, I should think. For clear parts, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that these are mostly original with some new bits. And original from the Enterprise B edition, because these are the new impulse engines that were added onto the saucer section that did not exist on the original kit. And I'm pretty sure this is the deflector for that version of the kit. But these appear to be all new. I'm going to say this is the new deflector. It might fit behind this. I'm not sure. I'd have to look at the instructions. But also you've got your 3 different impulse crystals. The single one for the NX version and the twin crystals for the NCC version. Otherwise, you've got your warp engine clear parts, side grills, and top detailing. It's not really necessary for these to have been molded in clear because they don't light up in any version of the ship that I'm aware of. And finally, the same stand as we see all the time, right down to the ball-jointed segment. Marking sheet, as seems to be always the case, just lots and lots of black windows. No option for lit windows. That's a huge bummer. Maybe they'll be included with the Aztecing sheet. 2 different sizes of ship names, not really sure why. Lots of ship registries for the nacelles, saucer perimeter, sensor strips, NX 2000, NCC 2000 registries, lots of pinstriping, which, same as the Reliant, the paired decals the paired stripes are on a single piece of carrier film. Though on the nacelles, these really long ones, yeah, single long strip of pinstriping. So that's going to be interesting. And then there's some stripes for the perimeter of the secondary hull, and just some interesting markings on the primary hull. Instructions, as always, start with the bridge and the secondary hull. Here you can see the 2 different bridge types and the rear deck. Swap out parts. You got your impulse engines, assembly of the main deflector, which it looks like it's just that one single part. Assembly of the neck and warp engines, support pylons, secondary hull. Your aft torpedo launchers, which this again appears to be an all-new part because I don't think that it had separate torpedo tubes on the original edition. You've got your shuttle bays and final assembly and attachment of the base, and then your painting and marking guide. In addition, there will be a complete set of Aztec panel decaling for the ship that will be coming out soon, but I don't believe they're quite out yet. But yeah. So, it's a nice looking ship. I've never been the biggest fan of the Excelsior, to be perfectly honest. I mean, its original appearance in Star Trek 3, it was kind of treated like a joke. At least, though, it finally got a little bit of respect in Star Trek 6, when it was featured under the command of Captain Sulu, and came to the rescue of the Enterprise at the end of that movie, and then featured prominently as, guest starship of the week on TNG and Deep Space Nine. It's a popular design, The Reliant class and the Excelsior class, or the Miranda class rather, not the Reliant class, have been featured very heavily in the TNG era Trek series. Unlike the Constitution class, which to me is just stunningly gorgeous, especially the refit version, which has never featured in anything aside from the 6 Kirk era movies. I've always found that kind of fascinating that they never. It was never a guest ship of the week, even though, from what I understand, there were times when they wanted to use it and decided not to at the last minute. Ended up using either a different model or just straight up building a new model. But whatever. But yeah, the Excelsior class, probably my least favorite of the prominent Starfleet classes of ships, but this is a nice looking model, and they really went to town on doing this, because they could have just, done some slight retooling on the Enterprise B, got rid of the raised panel lines all over it, and just re-released that, and never done the Excelsior. But I'm really glad they did the Excelsior, because I prefer that ship a lot over the Enterprise, or over the Enterprise B. Yeah, those modifications they made to it just kind of spoil the already kind of clunky lines of the Excelsior class. Anyway, that's enough of that. So next time, we're going to be taking a look at a 2-pack of models. The Klingon Bird of Prey and the Ferengi Marauder in, I guess you could just call it box scale, because, yeah, the scale on these is pretty much nonsense. So do stay tuned for that. Thank you everyone out there for watching, and happy modeling.